I'll join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thank you for showing up. Anyone here for the first time joining us? What brings you here?
A friend.
A friend. And what was promised? Like
nothing. I'm pretty open-minded.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for keeping the bar really low. Makes it easy on me, you know. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. What else? First time. Couple hands in the back. Yeah, right by the door so you can sneak out if you don't like it. It's a good spot. What brings you here?
We're looking for a spiritual community.
There are so many others. This one? I don't know. It's all right. What makes you look for a spiritual community? What do you think?
I grew up with one.
Yeah.
That doesn't resonate quite the same anymore.
Yeah.
And we're looking for one that works in our relationship.
Yeah, for sure. Nice. What do you think?
Yeah, for me, it's really curiosity. And like I've never really been spiritual, but I really enjoy the practice of meditation and self-awareness. This seems to be like really appealing for the need of spirituality and also that connection with self really emerge.
Yeah, for sure. Beautiful. Thank you. Well, welcome. Anyone else first time here? It's an interesting thing why people show up here, and very often, I think one of the most common reasons people show up is truly looking for community, other people to have some sort of spiritual practice. The reality is in a place like this, especially for those who might be brand new, show of hands, how many Buddhists are in the room? You got one hand, you know, and one like not sure, you know. So the beauty of, for me, this practice is it's not about, you know, I mean, for me, I'm a Jewish kid, and this community for the last 18 years has always been filled with people who are Christian, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, Mormon, pagan, or lack thereof. But people who are just looking for a place to kind of grow spiritually, cultivate a meditation practice, learn the teachings of Buddhism, which is in essence just how to lead a, you know, simple, kind, peaceful, compassionate life filled with endless wisdom, which I'm sure all of you have that part down already. But it's really simple. And then really, you know, as I encourage everybody always, and those of you who've been around forever know that, but I encourage everybody to always go check out other places. I mean, San Diego, Buddhism, we have probably, and I'm not exaggerating, probably 20 temples within a 10-mile radius of here. And I'm a big fan of people checking them out, you know, seeing what and how Buddhism is practiced and shared in different places and in different ways. I think that's really important. And most important is finding a place that you're comfortable. You know, and it's really hard. It's really hard cultivating and creating spaces in any way where people feel comfortable, because that requires everybody to kind of participate in a way that helps keep a safe space. You know, a space where people can be vulnerable and open and honest. It's difficult. So, you know, I'm always grateful to everybody who shows up here and works hard to keep that space, because it really is everybody that works to create a space that works. So with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. To those joining virtually, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. Feel free as you are to say hello in the chat box on your screen somewhere. Beirut, glad you're here. Glad you made it to Illinois. We miss you already, but we'll try to carry on without you. We almost shut down the temple when you left, but we'll keep it going. So a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. Mind that races all day long. It's not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Meaning, don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps sliding to the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, just relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or on the lap, whatever works for you. Most important, especially if you're new, don't expect anything. You're not going to think nothing. Your mind's not going to go blank. It's not going to empty. It will continue to race just as much as it always does. I'll say things periodically to either wake you up because you've fallen asleep or simply remind you that you're lost in thought and bring you back to the present moment. But again, most important, don't expect anything. We're just going to be sitting and breathing. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice, just sitting, breathing. learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, resting, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important, the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. Realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external situation. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, but began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react, more stuff happens, more reactions, and that's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Imagine going a day without being disturbed by someone. Imagine going an hour without being disturbed by someone. Most of you won't even make it out of the building before you're disturbed. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment, as we know all too well, is filled with conflict, chaos, difficulties, challenges. This is life. Meditation is not escaping from that. Meditation doesn't fix that. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, and you're angry and pissed off all the time, all the meditation in the world isn't necessarily going to help you. You have to understand why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so you can then begin to make changes in your life. And then you feel better. But it's a practice. It's not a quick fix. It's not a 6-week course and everything is done. It's a lifelong practice of taking care of your mental, emotional health and well-being. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in each moment. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. So much time focused on what others do and don't do. This practice is setting that down and focusing on, what do you do? What do you think? What do you say? That's this practice. And once we stop trying to change everybody around us and we work on changing our mind and our reaction and our heart, then our life gets a little simpler. But it doesn't mean the chaos stops. The chaos will never stop. The chaos around us will never go away, most likely. At least not in our lifetimes. But the question is, does our mind have to be in a state of chaos? Does our heart have to be in a state of chaos? That's the practice. To recognize the madness and not allow ourselves to become mad. To recognize the anger and not allow ourselves to become anger. And to recognize the sadness and not allow ourselves to become sadness. But not avoiding it either. Not closing your eyes to what's going on in the world and lives around us. Engaging in it, but from a place of loving kindness and compassion and not from hatred and anger. So with that, I'll pause. For me, always really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And again, to those joining virtually, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. Feel free if you have any questions, put them in the chat box. I'll do my best to respond. And we use the rest of our brief time for questions.
Morning. Morning, everyone. I was waiting to see if anyone else would go.
They were waiting for you.
Yeah. I've been reading about the 8 worldly concerns,
Okay.
and I'm just curious how that fits into the Eightfold Path or the
Yeah.
countries.
First, you'd have to.
It seems like the Eightfold Path may be like what to do, and then that would be like what not to do or to look out for.
You'd have to educate me on what the 8 worldly concerns are. Go ahead, because there's 2,500 years of translations of teachings that people have put into so many different numbers and titles and labels and things. So I can talk all about the Eightfold Path, but no idea what the 8 worldly concerns are. If there's only 8, that's phenomenal.
One of them was like about ego and protecting your ego and
Okay.
look out for that. And then also like talking to someone else and being upset when they criticize you.
Yeah.
And that was one of them.
Okay.
I have to look at more.
No, that's enough. I can go off of ego and fear enough. But what were you? Is it what book?
It's like Intro to Buddhism.
Okay.
Brief overview.
Yes, and that's the thing. I mean, that's great. What people, just again, to put it into context for everybody, there's what the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago. He was just some dude, for those who are brand new to this stuff, he wasn't some big belly dude floating in the sky. He was just a person. And he taught for 45 years and he died at 80. So this was 500 years before Christ, right? So for the last 2,500 years, you have a lot of years of people taking what he said, or what they believe he said, because it was just memorized, and then translating it into obviously multiple languages and then in modern day form and things like that. So really all we're looking at with modern day Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh, Pema Chodron, all those kind of common, books that you read, are each individual's own translation of what they think Buddhism is and how they can apply it to something today. And so those two things right there, ego. We've all heard in a Western context, Freud's teachings on ego, right? And so we use it in therapy, we use it in life, we use it to defend, to protect, to build, to grow, to shatter. So what somebody's doing is they're taking ego and they're saying, well, how does this fit into Buddhism, right? When I started in this practice 22 years ago, man, my ego was a mess. And that's not even counting, the 22 years before that. And so my ego was huge. I mean, now it's just like a tiny bit less. But I came into this practice thinking that okay, I'm going to destroy my ego. That's what I initially thought about Buddhism, was that it needs to get rid. I read teachings on non-self and I start thinking well, I need to get rid of me. I need to destroy my ego. My ego doesn't exist. I'm going to show you all how good I am at getting rid of my ego. Do you know how egotistical and arrogant that is? Let's argue over whose ego is less, right? That was my initial approach when I first started, because I thought the ego was a bad thing. And, that for me as a practitioner has had its evolution and ups and downs and explorations and awarenesses of my ego. And what I've settled on for me as a practitioner in this moment is that, yes, even though the Buddhist teachings talk about non-self, Dogen, the great Zen master, would say you must get to know yourself before you can get rid of yourself. What that means to me is, what is my ego? Where is it out of control? Where could it actually help me a little bit more? And becoming an observer of my ego to where it doesn't destroy my life or the life of those around me, but not pretending that all of a sudden my ego is just going to vanish. Your ego can help you at times. It can save you. It can protect you. It's not about becoming this just blob sitting under a tree. Our ego's got us here, right? For however you want to define that. Without an ego, we don't exist to be able to function in the world. So when I think about the Eightfold Path and starting with correct views and thoughts, this idea of having a view of what is my view of my ego and what do I think about my ego, it's important to get to know it. Our egos are all different, As a kid who grew up angry, pissed off, drinking too much, smoking too much, punching too many people, My ego was out of control, and it caused a lot of harm. So thankfully, I got a lot of that under control, but it doesn't mean the ego's gone. You know, does that start with the ego?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the second one around, you know, the kind of the thoughts or views people have of us. It was a while back, but you know, one of the college kids in one of our groups said, they said, you know, I'm worried that everybody I talk to is judging me. And I looked at him and I said, don't worry about that, because they are, right? Everybody is judging you, 100%. Everybody's judging me right now. Everybody's judging you for asking that question. You know, it doesn't mean that that judgment is bad. It's just what we do. We are observers of ourselves and others. The challenge is, can I understand that everybody is always viewing me and judging me my whole life and not really care? Like, that's their mess, you know? However people judge you, that's their mess, right? If you ask 10 people to define you and judge you, they're going to judge you completely differently. And none of them are right. They all have their own perceptions of you. The flip side to that is, when we judge people, we think we're right. You know, we have labeled and judged everybody, and that's exactly who they are. And so we hold on to anger and resentment and regrets and worries because we have a judgment of people. It's just what we do. So again, tying it to Eightfold Path and Buddhist practice, I think this idea of, at the end, you have mindfulness and concentration. This idea of cultivating an awareness and the ability to concentrate and focus on present moment allows us to understand that, yes, people are judging me, and that has nothing to do with me. You know? And if 50 people are judging me all in the same way, maybe there's something I should pay attention to about that. You know? I'm not saying it's true, but I shared this recently, you know, early on in this practice, a good friend of mine said to me, we were arguing about something around Buddhist stuff. And I remember saying, dude, that's just how I am. And he said, well, maybe you should change how you are. I thought that was one of the best teachings from a close friend who just kind of said to me, you know, I need to really look at what's going on. So people are always going to judge you. We got enough to worry about without worrying about what everybody else thinks of us, you know? So, and if you concentrate and focus on your life, your actions, your thoughts, your words, then, you know, let the chips fall as they may, as they say. So, yeah. Good stuff to read, though. What else?
I was thinking of big emotions, particularly grief.
Ah,
And I feel like within grief, there's sometimes healing in the suffering, right? Really just diving in, feeling it, letting yourself wail, that kind of thing.
yeah.
And I'm curious what space there is for that within the practice and how that fits into the practice and balances with it.
Yeah, so the question, just for those virtually didn't hear it, was you were thinking a lot about grief, and you know, you talked about, you know, the when in grief, just kind of, and I think you said wailing in it, you know, and is there a place really for it in Buddhist practice? Absolutely. Very often, and you mentioned suffering, very often, especially for those who are brand new, this first teaching of life is filled with suffering, right? Dukkha is the word, it translates to suffering. Terrible translation of dukkha, because suffering sounds so heavy and so traumatic. But dukkha, discomfort, angst, dis-ease, dissatisfaction, right? The examples I always give of your latte wasn't made with enough pumps or whatever you wanted in it. You know, your sandwich wasn't made the right way. You didn't win this, you didn't win that. These things are just like, to us in the moment, seem like life-threatening problems that a week later, we're gonna have a whole new set of life-threatening problems that also don't matter as much as the ones we were just upset about. Those little things throughout our day, I find with most people, is what annoys us all day long. The heavy trauma that we experience, death, loss, you know, abuse, things like that, that also exists in our lives and carries a heaviness to it that absolutely requires grief. But the challenge, and I think the, I don't know if mistake's the right word, I think an interpretation that I don't find useful within Buddhism is that this idea that if the teachings are life is filled with dukkha, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, and the path is to figure out how to get out of it, it almost makes it sound like we're not supposed to be in suffering. right? I mean, the Buddha said life is filled with it, and you have to understand it. He didn't say life is filled with suffering, so just ignore it. So from that, I bring in, for me as a practice of grief, to say, let's sit with, when, Buddhist practice, especially those who are new, is not emotionless. And often people make that mistake and think that if you practice Buddhism, that you don't care about things, or you're not attached to how things are. No, non-attachment means absolutely love and care for everything. You just understand that the outcomes are going to be completely different from what you expect, or what you different from what you want. So absolutely have grief, understand it. And when we suffer from loss and pain, and we cry and we hurt, good. You know what that means? What does that mean? You're alive, and what else? If you lose people, and it means you care. It means you have a heart. It means you love. There's nothing in Buddhism that says, lose people and don't care. Yes, the Buddha said we're guaranteed, once we're born, we're guaranteed to age. Not even get old. We're guaranteed to age. We're guaranteed to get sick, the body, the mind, and these types of things. And we're guaranteed to die. We will age, we will get sick, and we will die. Just because he says that's what happens doesn't mean we should so nonchalantly say, like, well, cool, I don't care. No, I do care. So be with the grief, understand it. Yeah, I don't know if that helps at all, but
Thank you.
yeah, for sure. What else? Yeah.
I was watching a video, you just mentioned dukkha, and the person in the video, he explained it as suffering as well, but he said that it's also the thought of whatever is like a happiness or a joy, it's not going to last forever, so that instant that it changes, and he used like sexuality or whatever. And he said that when you're in the act of making love with your partner, that's great, but then it ends, and that can also be considered dukkha. And I just thought, wow, dukkha is the end of something good. So that's, I thought, is that actually?
I would, let me paraphrase that for those virtualists. Your question was around, you were watching a video, again, one of the millions of people out there talking about this stuff, and like me, we all have no idea what we're talking about. Okay, we're all unenlightened, ignorant folks making up what we think these teachings mean. So always keep that in mind. If anybody tells you this is the way and the only way, and there's some enlightened whatever, turn that shit off. It just doesn't work that way, right? And we talk about ego, right? So be careful with that stuff. But to your question around, what you were watching was they were talking about, the person was talking about suffering and saying that even the happiness, the good things also end. So the happiness is suffering, being in a romantic relationship with somebody, and in the act that ends. So that also means it's suffering. I think that's and I don't usually hammer things like this, with all due respect to whoever said it, but I think that's a terrible explanation. And I think that that's very dangerous, because what that does is it also makes you think that good things are bad and wrong. What this person is actually commenting on, whether they reference this or not, is the Buddhist teachings on impermanence. This is very real and very important and very true. But when we have joy, experience joy. Don't look at, my suggestion is not to experience joy and think, well, this is going to end someday, so this sucks. That's miserable. No, experience joy, but understand, as the Buddha taught, all conditioned phenomena are subject to impermanence. Everything will change. You ever been in a relationship where you really loved the person and thought they were the greatest person in the world, and then thought otherwise? Yeah. So that changed. Ever had someone in your life that you really weren't okay with, or didn't maybe like, or didn't feel so comfortable with, and then all of a sudden now you do, and things change? All relationships will change. All emotions will change. All our physical possessions and objects will change. Everything comes together for a period of time and then ceases to exist. This is not dukkha. This is suffering. Impermanence is not suffering. Impermanence can lead to suffering if we have the expectation of things lasting forever. Make sense?
Thank you.
And that can be applied to anything. I mean, I'm so excited when somebody throws like just this large pizza in front of me, like there's, the greatest thing in the world. And then 5 minutes later, when I just destroy the whole thing, I'm in tremendous suffering. But I enjoyed the pizza. I was happy while I was eating it, So I'm not, people I think can take this stuff too far. That life is suffering sounds so miserable. Life includes suffering. Yeah. Impermanence is no joke. So there's a question here. First, a question around meditation and physical pain. If I'm feeling arthritis, pain while meditating. So let me touch on that briefly, and then I'm going to go to another question here. Meditation doesn't fix physical pain. It just doesn't. Often, if you're in physical pain, meditation may make it worse. Any physical pain or emotion, if you're angry, as I said, I grew up just incredibly angry. So when I first began a meditation practice, if I'm angry, just because I sit quietly and breathe, what do you think I'm left with? Just more anger, right? It doesn't like all of a sudden cultivate this sense of peace and happiness because you sit and do nothing. So physical pain often is the same thing, that if you have arthritis or any sort of physical pain, back pain, knee pain, whatever it might be, when you sit, it might highlight that physical pain. But the teaching around this is really called the second arrow. The first arrow is the fact that you have physical pain, and that's not fun on any level. And can you be, from a meditation standpoint, just with the physical pain? Can you say this is physical pain? That's the first arrow. The second arrow is now you're angry because you have physical pain. So now you're angry and in physical pain. The third arrow is now you're depressed because you have anger because you're in physical pain. Now you're sad because you're depressed because you have anger because you have physical pain. So you've added all these additional arrows instead of just being with physical pain. But if you think the meditation is going to heal it or fix that, it doesn't. Meditation and Buddhist practice as a whole does not fix things. It helps you become aware of things. It's an awareness. It's not a fixing. That's really important to understand the difference there. So many people come into meditation, Buddhist practice, spiritual practice, especially from a Western context of how we're raised, very often people thinking that someone else is going to fix them, save them, heal them, help them. And if that didn't work for you and you ended up at a weird place like Dharma Bum Temple, you might come in here thinking like, okay, well, what do you have to offer me that's going to fix me? A mirror. That's it. Look at a mirror. If you want to be fixed or healed or whatever it is, look in a mirror. Nobody can do that for you. Nobody can take away your physical pain. Now, I mean, there's medicine and doctors and surgeries and things like that. So, but I'm not getting into all that. So there are things that can help you manage physical pain. But when you're in pain, man, you're in pain. That's just the way it works. So I will suggest for people who maybe have physical pain and they're stuck thinking that meditation must be seated. You can do a walking meditation. You can do an eating meditation. As the Buddha taught, sitting, standing, walking, lying down, it's all a form of meditation if your mind is concentrated and focused. So I would potentially look at other forms of meditation, which may also be painful for you. But it's really about embracing the physical pain. And then to Beirus's comment here, when I arrived here meaning moved to Illinois, many of you know Beirut, who was here for a long time and just moved away. All of a sudden, the reality of many changes hit me, and I found myself in the middle of a mental storm of hopelessness, doubt, and fear of a new place, work, and relationship. Welcome to impermanence, right? Change is hard. The same mind that would sit here in the back corner, hiding out week after week after week, got comfortable here. But at one point in time, this was an uncomfortable place with strange people that you didn't know anything about. And so, kind of even adding to the teaching on impermanence, everything you just described is also impermanent. You'll feel hopeless. That will go away. Maybe tomorrow, maybe in 6 months. But hopelessness will go away. It'll change. It might get worse. Tomorrow you might be more hopeless than you are today. That's a possibility. But it'll change, right? Doubt, fear of a new place, all of that will change. Of course you have doubts. You're in a new place and you have no idea why you left San Diego to move to the middle of Illinois, you know? But you'll figure it out. Always come back to learning to be present. And this idea of duality, which we talk about a lot, you know, there's Zen mind, beginner mind. Just treat where you are now as if you've never been there before and you've never been here before. I don't mean Dharma Bums, I just mean San Diego in your old life. You're in a whole new life now. So be present with that. But it's quite natural, I think, to have those feelings of hopelessness and fear and what am I doing and I'm afraid and, you know, everything's confusing. But that'll change. It'll change. Like I said, it might get worse before it gets better, but it'll definitely change. So practice of diligence, just stay at it, man. Just keep going. You'll be all right. You know? If not, you know, you can always just turn around and draw back. I know him pretty well, so I'm being a little casual as opposed to the other times when I'm not. What else? Questions? Yeah.
When Buddha taught about greed, did that include more than money? Like for me, I'm a super control freak. I could never get it out there.
Yeah.
It's always give me more.
Yeah.
Give me more. Give me more.
Yeah. So the question is around when the Buddha taught about greed, was that about more than just money? And then you shared that, you know, you're super control freak, you know, you want more and more and more. Those are your words, not mine, right? Yeah. So I just want to back up a little bit to clarify, right? So the Buddha said life is filled with suffering. And then the second thing he taught is the cause of suffering. And they're often referred to as the three poisons. You know this, but for those who might be new, greed, anger, ignorance. Those words kind of can be interchanged, but looking specifically at greed, craving, desire. So greed is not just about, especially in our Western culture, especially in spiritual religious places, people think of greed and they immediately go to money. Greed has nothing, I want to say it has nothing to do with money. It includes money, but that's like one of a million things, right? How many shirts do you have? T-shirts?
15.
15. Really? That's it?
That's it.
That's not bad.
That's true.
Got one more. How many pairs of shoes you got?
10.
You're not
I'm
making this
trying to-
easy on me.
I'm not trying to contradict you. I'm not
Yeah.
a big stuff.
I'm not looking for contradiction. Who here has more than 15? I'll look at all of you. Come on, right? So you got 50 shirts. You don't need 50 shirts. You just look. I saw that. How many shirts you got?
48.
48. You know exactly, right? We don't need 48 shirts. You don't need 15. If you had 10 shirts, would you be okay?
Sure.
Okay. So being greedy is not about this like, oh, I need to get rid of all my stuff. It's about recognizing where are we craving and desiring more than what we actually need. So as a practice, you have 15 shirts. Take 5. Give 5 away to people sleeping on the streets that would love 5 new shirts. You will probably survive with just 10 shirts. You know, after 2 weeks, when you go into like panic mode and you're like, man, I need a new shirt, you know, then you'll maybe have the resources to buy a new shirt. Non-attachment, I also suggest taking 5 shirts that are not the ones that are like in the back of your drawer or closet that you never touch, but take 5 that you actually like, right? So it's the craving and desire for things. It's not that greed makes you bad. It's understanding that we constantly want more. I mean, look at all the food, how much food, when you order, if you eat out and you order food, do you eat every single thing that was on your plate? No. I forget the number, but it was like something billion pounds, tons of food wasted every, it's ridiculous, right? One of my favorite practices, kind of monastery Zen monk life, was when we would eat, we would have 2 bowls, and one had kind of like a soup or you know, like more like a soup really, and the other had whatever food was put in it, right? and it was all in silent. You took the meal. You ate everything that was in the bowl. Okay. You could get more if you wanted. There was always a bunch of different food that you were being served by, the monks or volunteers or things like that. And we took turns serving people. So if you wanted more food, you would push your bowl forward. But let's say like in the first round of food, you got something you really liked. I got it was never pizza, but I got pizza, right, as an example. So the question is, okay, if I want more, I'm welcome to put the bowl out there, but I don't know what's coming next. Maybe it's broccoli. But whatever I got, I had to finish. So the question is, do I want my hunger to win, or do I want my craving for what I want to eat to be challenged? So you put food out. When you're done eating, put the bowl out. When you're done eating, you take everything out, right? It's chopstick. And then you take the little soup bowl or a little tea or water, whatever you had, you pour it in the bowl, you would stir it, and then you would drink it. The whole idea, there was not one grain of rice left in the bowl. And it was there to teach us. It comes from the time of the Buddha when they say he lived on 1 grain of rice a day, because he thought if he starved himself to death that he would awaken, which is not the right teaching, right? You got to have a balance in the middle path. And so I'm not suggesting that you need to adopt that practice either, but recognizing man, how much food do we waste? How much do we consume? How much time do we take from people, right? There's so many other things that we are greedy for: people's time, their attention, their heart, their smile, their hugs, food, clothes. There's so much that we're craving. That has nothing to do with money. Yes, I get it. And for many people, when you think greed, you immediately go to greedy for money. But most of our greed and craving all day long, nothing to do with money. It's little things like craving to sit in the same seat. All of you who sit in the same seat, right? You're not bad people because you come into the Dharma Bum Temple and want to have your spot, But look at how conditioned we are to have our things the way we want them. Because ultimately, what is this all about? We want to have what? Control. Because a lack of control is terrifying. For those of you who like to control everything and everyone your entire life, I love when people look at each other. And believe me, that's, I was talking about how I got into this practice, but, being angry and trying to control everything, that'll put you here Saturday at 11 o'clock. So anger and control really, or craving and control and anger. Do you see how you can explore this? Has nothing to do with money. Yeah. And the Buddha taught, last thing I'll say before we close is, the Buddha said, okay, well, if we have a problem with craving, desire, right, greed, then the practice is to overcome greed is generosity. But it's not just about giving away your clothes. The Buddha said the greatest form of generosity is to give the teachings called the Dharma. And he didn't mean sitting up here and giving some talk about Buddhism. He meant, can you give loving kindness? Can you give compassion? Can you give forgiveness? Can you give understanding? Can you give these things to yourself and every single person you encounter? That is the greatest gift. If you can give these things to every person and place and thing in your life, then you are practicing generosity. And you're practicing overcoming that greed and that craving and that desire. And as always, these aren't opportunities or moments for you all to judge yourself and think like, oh, I'm such a greedy this or greedy that. We're just human, right? We're all doing our best. And, as Suzuki Roshi said, you're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use a little improvement. So stop beating yourself up so much. You don't need to improve that much. Just a little bit, you'll be good to go. All right, I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May this merit be transferred to Pam during her time of healing, and to Mark during his suffering as well, and to all of those who suffer at this moment. May they all be at peace, and may we all be at peace. All right. So a few quick announcements before you all head out. And thanks for the follow-up comment on the pain. Yeah, the curiosity it helps. I mean, to be curious, just try not to be stuck mentally. So thanks for showing up. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night we have different practices going on, different people leading from a different tradition. Every Thursday, 4:30, we do, I think, one of the best things around here. It's a food redistribution program. We prepare gourmet vegetarian meals, also known as peanut butter and jelly, and we feed people who sleep on a street. So anytime you think your life kind of sucks and you lack gratitude for all you have, again, everything we have, feed people sleep on a sidewalk every night. It tends to put things into perspective, and it helps us have a little more appreciation for everything we do have in our lives. Other than that, a few things out of the ordinary, just schedule-wise. Coming up on July 19th, we'll be walking in I'll start announcing this consistently, it just got posted the other day, but we'll be marching in the San Diego Pride Parade. Again, that'll be Saturday the 19th. So if everybody wants to march, website, you can go just kind of register there through temple stuff. So that's really beautiful. And then equally, if not more important, on Monday morning, we have sworn for all of eternity. As long as Dharma Bum Temple and Pride Parade and Festival is around, we have sworn for eternity to help Monday morning clean up Balboa Park after the Pride Festival. So it's 2 days of just madness in Balboa Park, and then everybody is hungover, worn out, exhausted, and just ready to, rest. But the park is a mess. So we've done that the last few years, and that's really where they need the most volunteers, is cleaning up Monday morning. It's 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's a day, man. It's a grind, but it's incredible. I think we had about 50 people out there last year helping out from here. So we're going to put together a huge crew again. Again, that's the Monday, the 21st after Pride. We'll do 2 shifts, 7 a.m. to noon or noon to 5. Or if you want like extra credit points and be a better Buddhist, you can stay from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. For you ego people who want to be a better Buddhist. Other than that, that's all for now. So thank you all. Wish you well. Good luck.
Windows closed.
You can leave them open. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Jeff.